Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest on the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, so today I have Bill Bimel on the line. He's founder and CEO of First Lien Capital, and he's also host of the Real Estate Lowdown podcast, which we're so proud and excited to distribute and produce. Bill, first off, I just want to say, hey, welcome back on the show.
Adam, it's great to be with you again.
Oh, man. So, this smiling ear to ear. I know we have some episodes on our site right now of the Real Estate Lowdown, and we'll talk about the content you're creating and your vision for the show overall. And of course, maybe for some of those that didn't catch some of our previous work together, of course, we want to get into First Lien Capital and how you're helping your clients. But to get us kicked off, we'll start this episode the way that we start them all, with our Mission Matters Minute. So, Bill, we at Mission Matters, we amplify stories for entrepreneurs, executives, and experts. That's our mission. Bill, what mission matters to you?
Well, thanks for asking, Adam. One of the mission that matters most to me is positively impacting the world and individuals, especially those that might be facing distress in their lives. We do this in my business at First Lien Capital by purchasing defaulted mortgages, which we can purchase from banks at somewhat of a discount to their value. And then we help homeowners either stay in their homes or exit with dignity if they can no longer afford to live there. So really positively impacting people in an individual manner is really the mission that matters most to me.
Yeah, and you're creating a lot of win-win scenarios there, and I want to go through a scenario or two in a moment. But first off, I mean, the star of this show, yeah, it's you. But come on, this new show, the Real Estate Lowdown.
Right.
First off, congrats on launching the show.
Thank you. And it would not have been possible without you. I was thinking, at the beginning when you said, if you want to apply to be a guest, I'm lucky I didn't have to apply because I don't know if I would have. But we met a few years ago when you were getting Mission Matters up and running. I love the concept of having a mission in and of itself as a parent, someone trying to raise children, someone trying to be a leader in the world and connect with people of all ages, but especially young people. Just having a mission is so important. And so it's great that you were there to support me. I would not have been able to get this podcast off the ground and rolling as well as it's rolling now without the support of you and your production team. So
awesome.
Thank you for that.
Too kind, and it's our privilege to do so. And I want to now that you've kind of crossed over, and what I mean by the crossover is from being in front of the mic to kind of behind the mic, as well as a show host and a producer and a creator of content. How's that journey been for you so far?
It's fascinating. It is exhilarating. It is stressful, and it's all worth it, I think, at the end of the day. There is a part of me that is into performance and being in front of people. There's something that really I enjoy about that. So then if I can take my knowledge and experience in business or even in my personal life experience, and I can share that with the world, and do so in an entertaining way that's informative and kind of moves forward the conversation about whatever it might be that we're talking about. To me, that fulfills a lot of my mission and, really kind of drives me in life. So it has been really a fantastic journey. I have to remember not to forget the journey. And I sitting out in my car this morning, I was counting the number of, if we're doing a weekly podcast, I'm like, how many episodes do I still have to do before the end of the year? Oh my gosh.
Don't do that. If I was to get in my head on that one, Bill, oh my gosh.
The other thing is, though, that I have the privilege of having met some of the most brilliant minds in all kinds of world, but especially in the real estate and mortgage finance and private equity investment space. So, and there has been times throughout my career where I'm in a phone call with somebody and I said, God, I just wish we had recorded this conversation, talking about the current events of the market or, things that have happened. And so having the podcast as my new voice really offers that opportunity. So the Real Estate Lowdown is meant to inform and really stay on the cutting edge that way. And it's an opportunity for me to introduce the world to all of the magnificent people that I've met, either, from an intellectual or creative point of view. And so I'm really looking forward to the journey.
Yeah, and it's a great journey. And I love that you bring up something, because this is something that I tell people all the time. And that's what you just said. Like, sometimes you're having a conversation and you're like, man, this should have been recorded, or man, like many people could have benefited from this. Like, I remember when I first started the first show, and I got started with my first couple episodes, I had kind of like this epiphany. I remember when I was like really like just getting started in finance, and I was on a recorded line speaking all the time because, for obvious compliance reasons. And so we were on a recorded line. It was, kind of call center feel and vibe. And, your manager would listen to your calls for call quality and things like that. And it's so interesting to, like, again, connect the dots going backwards. Who would have thought that, like, little, 20-some-year-old Adam was talking on a recorded line and figuring out how to engage the person on the other end of the phone and having an intelligent conversation and figuring out how to smile and enjoy yourself. And I'm like, man, that was training for 20 years or 15 years, whatever it was later. And to be launching a podcast and to be having those type of conversations, It's interesting how everybody has something to offer. And that word you use, journey, we're all at different points of it. But I think when you start thinking from the standpoint of giving back and how you can give your expertise to help others, I think you have the potential for some magic to happen.
Right. Right. And, I think that's what life is about too. You go in stages. I'm still certainly in the money-making stage. I'm not retired yet.
As are we all. If you're in Los Angeles or...
Yeah, exactly. If you want to feel poor, be a millionaire that moves to Southern California,
Yep.
It's... So, but at the same time, you get to that stage where you really see the value in balancing your time and giving back. I've always felt that way personally. Yeah. I've always, been very well-rounded. Like it balances my psyche to volunteer no matter what, but even when I didn't have an income myself, I would give still a portion of my time to help people or teach people or whatnot. But for some people, it's that's getting to that phase of your life where you actually feel like you have the knowledge that can be of value to the world, and that you see it. So, I think that you're inspiring a lot of other folks in our world to do the same, and it's really great what you guys are up to.
What kind of advice would you give to the entrepreneur, the executive that's out there? They're going to watch this and they're thinking, and I don't mean, it doesn't have to just be a podcast, by the way. I just mean creating content in general. What kind of, could be a blog, could be, obviously I'm biased to podcasting, love books, but what kind of advice would you give to that person that's out there and they're just on the fence? They understand they should be doing some type of content creation, but they just haven't started. What would you tell them?
Well, certainly the number one, this is a rule that I give this advice no matter whether it's content creation, investing, or starting a new business, whatever it is that you have to set forward. You can only take so many book trainings and read so many books and plan so much. You've got to get on the court and just take a chance. My mother used to say that to me, and she was actually a surprisingly conservative woman who would say things to me like, take a chance every day, put yourself out there. You never know where it's going to lead you. And she didn't mean go jump off of a building, she meant take a chance, whatever, and put yourself on the court. You might have seen me looking around here because I was looking for a copy of my book. You mentioned win-win. For those that don't know me, I wrote a book called Win-Win Revolution 5 years ago. And that's actually what brought you and I together. It was, you did not publish it, but it was shortly after I published it, we connected, you and myself and Chirag, and, just that we were talking about possibly doing a second book back then. And that book was the starting point for creating a legacy, in my opinion. And that's a little bit of a personal ego thing, but it's also about leaving a mark on society and in my business. So you've got to see that there's an immediate level of authority if you can provide good content, whether it be in the form of a consistent podcast. The reason I never did the podcast before was I never had the producing team like I do with you. And, I couldn't do it alone. And I know that the whole key to podcasts is consistency and generating, regular content so that, versus a webinar that you might do once a month or once a quarter, which I do now as well, or write a book, which you might do once a year or once every couple of years. But whatever it might be, it has exponential value, in my opinion, in terms of getting your message out, creating a level of authority if you can provide good content, and creating a book of business. I mean, like just having a library, that's the thing that I'm excited about, is that if I stick with this in 5 years from now, I could have, 1,500 podcast episodes, an entire library where you will go to, where people could go and say, I want to learn about net lease properties from Bill today. And there's episodes that interview investors in net lease. There's something that we have, our Real Tidbit series, where I spend 10 minutes talking about a very specific word or concept within the real estate and finance. And all of this, it's like, I'm creating an encyclopedia, and so there is so much value to doing this. But the first step is putting yourself on the court, making the commitment, and then following through, obviously, on that.
Yeah, and that idea of a library or a catalog, like I can't stress the value of that enough. I'll tell you, when we started this journey of podcasting in general, I didn't really kind of understand. I mean, I was just getting started in the media business, transitioning from finance. We had a book out, a couple books, and I was thinking about, learning this new space in general. And I dive in. I took a chance, right? Like your mom would say, took a big chance, right? Yeah, gave up my licenses, did a lot of other things, and I didn't really understand the concept of a catalog, or also the idea of being searchable and being able to be found on Google and other places. And I can tell you now, 5-6 years in, you Google or you look up podcasts or something else, and it'd be real hard to not see a Mission Matters episode if you type in my name or Mission Matters or business or all these keywords. So what I'm even more excited about, is what happens, like you said, X amount of years down the line when you have even more episodes, just the amount of value that you're going to be able to leave out there, not just as a legacy, but also to the next generation, the people that can really benefit from that, because It's so hard to make sure that you're getting your content or what you're getting from a source that's, let's just say, qualified to talk about it. So I think this is a good transition maybe to start to talk a little bit more about First Lien Capital and what you do there, because it all relates to the podcast as well. So maybe start off with telling us a little bit more about your firm.
Yeah. And, before I do that, just to go back to the concept of, we see so much content in the world, so it seems a little overwhelming, right, in the world that we live in today. Yeah. But I remind people that the internet is less than 20 years old. It's really this social media revolution. I went back and I was one of the first people on Instagram, and that was only 10 years ago.
Wow.
And so it is just the beginning of a world of content creation. So, it's not too late by any means, and so there's that. So in the world of, I'll tell you about First Lien Capital in my business. I've been in real estate for about just over 20 years now. I started as a fix and flip investor in South Florida, Fort Lauderdale, where I grew up. I own and still have a piece of two real estate brokerages, a residential brokerage and a commercial brokerage. The commercial brokerage, in the middle 2000s, I was involved in the development of several brand restaurant chains. both casual dining and fast food. Our firm represents BJ's Restaurant and Brew House and Darden and McDonald's and Taco Bell. And then we also did CVS's and Dollar Trees and Family Dollars and whatnot. So that business is still ongoing. I'm not an active partner anymore. I'm just a passive partner. My partners in Florida run that business today. Because in 2008, I had an opportunity to start buying mortgages on the secondary mortgage market. It was a light bulb moment for me. It was when the residential market was crashing back then. It was actually pre-crash. It was kind of in the midst of it, 3 months before the fall of Lehman Brothers.
Wow. So you were right. You were right on the head of that one, right?
Yeah. It was like right there.
I was still cutting my teeth as a new financial advisor and in finance when that was going through, figuring out what was going on. Go ahead.
Right. No, I mean, it was right time, right place.
Yeah.
I started advising a group out of Southern California on a pool that they had just purchased from, I think it was Nat City, which is now PETA. I don't know. So these were construction to perm loans that had gone bad in Port St. Lucie. It was like the scene in The Big Short, where you go up to Port St. Lucie, Florida. It's brand new homes. Some of them just like with the doors open and vacant and like a ghost yard. Many that had renters or somebody living in it. And all those renters were paying rent to landlords that weren't paying their mortgages. And so inside of that experience of purchasing mortgages at a discount, my team built a whole new paradigm. We did not want to be the vulture investor that was coming in to take people's homes. We said, we were all in this together, right? We all had somebody in our lives that was affected by this huge downturn in either valuation or uptick in foreclosures. And I personally know, we all know somebody, and most of us have our own story. And so we created the paradigm, which I outline in my book, Win-Win Revolution. And it's to help borrowers. It's to be borrower-centric. A borrower in default does not expect the bank to call them up and say, what would you like to do here? Yeah. And so that's kind of the experience that our borrowers have. Obviously not that simple. But if a borrower has the ability to stay in their home, they have a new job, they can support the income, and they're just fallen behind, we will put them in a program, keep people in their homes. And we do that with about 30 to 40% of the defaulted mortgages we buy. And then the others will exit with dignity. Now, we've done this to the tune of close to $1 billion invested with private equity capital. That private equity capital allows me the flexibility as an investor to help people, to make decisions outside the box that don't fit into the normal rules of servicing or the bureaucracies that banks and lenders and sovereign wealth companies that normally own these loan mortgages, set in place. So we are I always see it like it's like when a defaulted borrower gets their loan purchased by us, it's like a gold mine for them. I mean, not like financially, it may or may not be a boon, but that is an opportunity to actually speak with someone. So we've been doing this for over a decade. I did this at a firm called Spurs Capital for 10 years. And then I launched First Lien Capital in 2021 with the same intention. Now, as instead of being the second in command at my fund, it's my fund. And, and we're going to go out there obviously we are coming into a market that has headwinds. There's a lot of volatility. And so, we are in the right time, right place again. Imagine this being like 2008 again. This is kind of where I'm at in the world of secondary mortgage market.
And so what is the typical, just an education piece, because I don't want to assume as well that our audience knows this, but what is it? What does a typical experience look like? I mean, I know that it may vary, but if somebody's, falls behind or something, like what can that typical experience look like, just to kind of juxtapose?
No, absolutely. It's a good question. And it's good that you ask it, because most of my conversations and interviews are with business people you're a business person, but like more like industry, and they
institutional,
institutional guys, right?
Yeah.
Whereas it's nice to talk to a broader audience about it, because in most of the cases when we're buying non-performing loans, the borrower is already, a little afraid to talk to their loan servicer, and in some cases may have shut down.
And that's why I asked you the question, by the way, so that people know that there is potentially alternatives out there. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And 95% of the industry is going to still play into the same bucket. And even we have a loan servicer. We obviously stay in compliance with government regulations. Those loan servicers will call our borrowers up too and do the same Miranda warning when they call up you, this is a debt collector, blah, 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 blah. Mm-hmm. But they are trained to very quickly get away from, oh, where's my $40,000 check? Or, or like, you owe us $8,000. When can we expect a payment? We offer the opportunity to the discussion points for what we call loss mid options or resolution options. And we offer that from day one. Mm-hmm. So the first thing is to get the first most important step is to get a conversation now re-engaged with the borrower.
Yeah.
The majority of the stuff that we are buying, either the borrower has already shut down communication with the current servicer, or when they see that it gets transferred to a specialty servicer, they're very slow. They're not going to call up and be like, oh yeah, I'm 6 months behind. Hi. They're not anxious. Most people are not anxious to do that. So sometimes we can't.
Understandably, by the way, because more than likely or many times, there's some hardship or something that caused them to fall behind, like they lost their job.
Exactly.
So it's quite understandable. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And that's the attitude that we take, is that we don't know what the circumstances are. And the reality of it is even if the circumstances are that they just decided to play the system because they heard the CARES Act may support people that stop paying their mortgage or whatever it might be, we're not going to sit there in a place of judgment on that. We're just going to look to resolve. So the first step is getting that honest communication, that re-engagement with the borrower. And sometimes and quite often it takes more than just sending a letter from the servicer or getting the phone call from the servicer, because that's what they're avoiding. So we have people on the ground. They are not debt collectors. They are theoretically, they're actually registered as debt collectors, but they're never told. They never talk about the debt. They're told specifically not to. We taught them how to be debt collectors just so that they knew what not to do, right?
Yeah.
And they it's like realtors or mortgage loan officers or GCs. And they'll go and they'll knock on the door and they'll put a happy face and they'll say, listen, I happen to have a relationship with your new loan servicer and the investor that owns your loan. I'm telling you should talk to them. That is the first step. And then that's what the first step looks like to most of the NPL that we're purchasing. And then a conversation will happen with our specific asset manager at the servicer. She'll engage to see what we call the reason for RFD, the reason for default. It may or may not be something that matters. And then we look at what's their current situation. And we'll gather information about their current financial situation, their income. And if the first step, like I said, is always to try to keep people in their homes. So we will put people into a trial program, but as opposed to what a lot of the banks were doing in 2009, where they put you in these extend and pretend trial programs forever. We do a really good modification, a trial program that will lead to a direct modification. In many cases, you'll capitalize whatever the past due is as a new loan balance. If they're upside down at that point, I'll probably bring them to a 95 or a 97% LTV, because an upside down mortgage, even if it's performing, doesn't have a lot of value to me. I can't resell it on the secondary market. And I want people to be vested in these homes again. So then if we run the retention route and very quickly realize that either they're playing games or they don't have the money, or it's just not possible, then they're moving out, they have to upsize, they have to downsize, whatever it might be. We then talk about how we can exit with dignity. If I'm going to spend $5,000 or $10,000 to foreclose and evict, and then I got to go fix up the house or whatever, why not pass that? Why not talk to the borrower and say, listen, let me pass that money on to you instead of me paying my attorneys and my, to in this process, and then having to pay, the insurance and the, upkeep the property while we.
So they may get some benefit on this end. It's like saying, well, if it's going to happen inevitably anyway, like let me pass that value to you, right?
Correct. So there are actually defaulted borrowers that walk away with cash from properties that are upside down even. And so, with us and so, we try to help people, whether it's setting them up in a new home or, getting them in with relatives. Some people have a rich relative that would love to pay off the mortgage at a discounted price. No bank in America will allow that to happen. Only private equity guys like us. It's the number one rule, like one of the number one bureaucracy rules, which I guess makes sense. It makes sense, to sell, to allow debt to be purchased by family members at a discount. That probably sets a bad precedence for banks. So I can understand why they're not doing it. But there's been cases where somebody owes us $250,000 on a $300,000 house. Yeah. I may have bought that loan for $180 or $200, and I can turn around very quickly and sell and give them a $10,000 discount because their relatives cashing out a 401k and they can pay us $235 or something. I mean, we have that kind of flexibility.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of thing we do. And then there's always 25, 30% that, think they're going to do it their way, or they think that the bank wronged them in some way. So now they're going to live it out and put, cement in the pipes or, whatever. I mean, there's always the folks there's the shysters. There was actually an article in the New York Times. I don't know if you saw me post this on LinkedIn last week, but there's an article in the New York Times about, what we call deed rats. They call them deed theft. In the New York Times, it calls it deed theft. And it's kind of a little bit of a slanted angle. There's a lot more layers to this, but there are people that go around and find defaulted borrowers in New York City, pay them for the deed, knowing that they're upside down. They're not, they're going into default, and then, just rents the property out for years without paying the mortgage, and then, fighting the mortgage and basically just living off the rental income. It's a known a scheme in New York. So, I mean, there's stuff like that we have to contend with, but the motto is get the default. We get paid by arbitraging a resolution, with the borrower. And if we can do so in a way that helps borrowers, helps our society, and, it plays into the mission too. So it's all great. And we make our investors tons of money. So
hence the win-wins. Hence the win-wins and the title of your book, right? You're trying to create win-win scenarios and amicable resolutions for all parties concerned. So I think it's a great model. Circling back to the podcast. Tell us a little bit more about what you have planned coming up, like whether it's episodes, vision for the series overall, but give us a little bit more of a flavor for your creative process and what's to come next.
Sure. No, thank you. It's interesting because I think that we've talked about it because we've met in some powwows since the launch of this thing. This is really a journey that we will grow with. And I'm sure that I will look back on these first 10 or 20 episodes and be like, oh man, I wish I had done it.
I look back on my first 300, Bill, so you're better than me.
Right, exactly. So I haven't got it all figured out yet, but I do know this. The podcast is going to have 2 or 3 basic themes to it. We are going to interview as much as possible. We're going to do a 20-minute to 30-minute interview with somebody that is inside either the real estate world, the mortgage world, private equity, finance, because that plays such a huge role in real estate, and then the various asset classes related to real estate. Yeah. For example, tomorrow we have an interview with a gentleman named Christian DeBoer. He is the proprietor of a all-suite hotel in Siem Reap, Cambodia, that has one of the first leading hotels. It's always listed top 20 hotels in the world. Wow. He's always managed top 20 hotels himself his whole career. And he made a commitment about 7 years ago to go completely for plastic free with this hotel. So no, and now has created a mission to eliminate single-use plastic in all hotels around the world. And he's even become a spokesman for the United Nations in this regard. And so guys like, now that's like a loose connection to the real estate world, but hospitality is an asset class.
A huge connection.
Yeah. And we also spend a lot of time talking in the investor world, the private equity investor world, about ESG, environmental social governance. So tomorrow's, episode will also highlight ESG. So interviews with fascinating people like that. I interview my partner, Nate Werner, in the commercial real estate world. He's really a wealth of information. We'll hear more from him over the months and years ahead. But just to kind of introduce what he does, which is a very specific area of commercial real estate, tenant representation for restaurants. And so we drill down into these specific things. So that's the main idea is these interview formats. Inside of that, there is what we call the Real Tidbit series. So every podcast episode, almost every podcast episode, will have a real tidbit. And a real tidbit is a word or a phrase. We're going to drill down and spend 5 to 10 minutes talking about what that means and how it applies to the world. And most often you're going to find that word being talked about in that podcast, right? So like last week, we released an interview with George Newberry. He's a competitor of mine in the space, good friend, gentleman that owns a loan servicer, owns a fund, and now has a concept called pre-REO, which is basically selling mortgage notes in default that are in the foreclosure, but they haven't finished foreclosure yet. He's calling this pre-REO. And so we talk about this business that he's launched, which I think is a very interesting angle for those that are starving to get their hands on real estate in a low supply market. But then REO. So what's the word REO mean, right? So I spend a few minutes talking. That's my real tidbit for that hour. And then there'll be episodes that will be multiple real tidbits where I'll spend 20. I might talk about 3 concepts in an area of commercial real estate, net leases, triple net investments, and that might be a podcast as well. And then the third area that you'll see in our podcast is I do a monthly webinar, or I do about 10 a year with interviews with people in my business or industry updates that show slides and graphs and things like that. And so clips of that will get brought into the podcast as well.
Man, Bill, you got a whole lot going on. I wish I was as seasoned as you and had that type of vision when I got started. I'm like, this is awesome.
It's on my head. Okay, good. It's good to hear.
Hey, I'm excited to see the content continue to go and to continue to flow. I mean, you're producing great stuff, and that's why I asked you, your vision for it, just so the audience, because I want them to 100% go check it out. The Real Estate Lowdown. Really easy to find on our website or Apple or Spotify, or really anywhere on podcasts. You type in Bill's name, Bill Beimel, or you type in Real Estate Lowdown. It's going to come right up. Mission Matters Podcast Network. So that being said, Bill, if somebody is watching or listening to this and they want to learn more, to follow up and connect about First Lien Capital as well, I mean, what's the best way for them to do that?
You can go to my personal website to connect with me in all things business or personal. And that is my first and last name.com, BillBeimel.com, BillBeimel.com. And that will direct you to my various websites that you can buy my book there. You can schedule a call with me and just maybe sign up to join a live webinar as well. So that's it. BillBeimel.com is the place to be. And I look forward to really sharing the journey with folks. And if I say, it's nice to hear that you say I have a plan, because I guess I do have a plan.
It's a plan, Bill. Come on. I've produced a lot of shows, man. That's a plan. Don't even.
Maybe I overplan.
It may not be, hold on. It may not be financial modeling like a fund, but come on, man. This is content creation. This is a plan. You got to give yourself some room to breathe over here.
Good. I think it's more the execution right now. It's like, wanting to stay familiar with the audience and comfortable and really. And I've got the perfect I think I've got the perfect face for radio, is what they say.
All right, not commenting on that one, but I will say that it has been great having you back on the show, and to the audience. If this is your first time engaging in a Mission Matters episode or the platform overall, we're all about bringing on entrepreneurs, executives, experts, having them share their mission. You know, why do they do what they do? How are they doing it? What can we all learn from their lessons, and how do we all grow from it? I mean, if that's the type of content that sounds interesting or fun or engaging or something worthwhile, hit that subscribe button, because we have many more mission-based individuals coming up on the line, just like Bill. And definitely go check out Bill's podcast. Don't forget, go hit subscribe on that. So Bill Bimel, put it in. We'll have links in the show notes as well, so that you can just click on it, head right on over and hit subscribe. And Bill, until the next time, man, it's been a pleasure having you back on the show.
Yeah, great to be with you, Adam. Thank you.